Hello, Manitoba. I'm Larry McIntosh, and I'll be your host for the next hour. Happy Labor Day Monday. Normally, Food and Friends airs on Sundays at 1 o'clock, so I'm happy you've joined us here today. I want to take a moment to tell you about some of the Manitoba-grown vegetables that are available at your local store right now. Peak of the Market growers have been working extremely hard, harvesting their crops for you to enjoy. Now, here's a list of all the Manitoba-grown vegetables that are available right now at your store. And it's a long list, but let's go. There's beets, broccoli, carrots, corn, green, red, and Savoy cabbage, cauliflower, cucumbers, kale, leeks, parsnips, rutabagas, shallots, zucchini, green and jalapeno peppers, green acorn, butternut, and spaghetti squash, rutabagas, and red, russet, and yellow flesh potatoes. So lots of vegetables available right now. Now, corn on the cob and cucumbers and zucchini, they're going to be winding up soon. Peppers won't be far behind. So get out and get them while they're still fresh right here in Manitoba. If it says Peak of the Market on the label, you are guaranteed it is grown right here in Manitoba, and you're supporting Manitoba farmers. My guest today is Clare MacKay, Vice President, Corporate and Community Initiatives at the Forks, North Portage. Thank you for joining us, Clare.
Thank you for having me.
So how are you today?
I'm well, thanks.
Happy Labor Day.
Thank you. Happy Labor Day to you as well.
So I always get messed up. The Forks, North Portage. I know the Forks, right? Everybody knows the Forks. We all go to the Forks. It's a meeting place. But what is the Forks, North Portage? What's the title mean?
We're somewhat of a marriage of two corporations. We're the Forks Renewal Corporation on the side that most of you know us for, which is the Forks. And on the North Portage side, we're the North Portage Development Corporation. And we were merged many years ago as a way of sort of finding a way to make the Forks itself financially self-sufficient. So the work we do on the North Portage side is actually, a lot of it is more behind the scenes. We own land in the North Portage neighborhood. We manage roadways. Our biggest source of revenue for both the Forks and North Portage is parking. We own 2,500 parking spots in downtown Winnipeg, and we take all of the revenue that comes from that and we put it back into the community. So we take it and we put it into the Forks. It costs a few $1 million to run the Forks every year, and we are financially self-sufficient. So while we have 3 shareholders in the 3 levels of government, we don't require any funding from those 3 levels of government. So we actually manage to do all of the things that we do on both the North Portage side and at the Forks by doing it through sources of revenue other than government funding. So the North Portage development side of us is mainly as a landowner, as a community partner, as a catalyst for change in the downtown, as well as owning a parking company.
See, I would have assumed that the Forks is a wonderful place. It is a wonderful place. I want to assume that. And there's stores there and all sorts of things. But I would have assumed government would have put money in there to make it run because it's a park and everything else.
Well, and initially they did. The initial land deal that came together because of 3 levels of government. And they are, as I said, still our shareholders. They make up our board of directors, and we still are responsible to those 3 shareholders. But we are financially self-sufficient, and in everything that we do, we strive to be so. So we may go to different funding sources for different monies for specific projects. We also have our own foundation, so larger projects are often taken through our foundation. We also seek out sponsorship continuously, so a lot of those large signature events that happen on the Forks side of things only happen because of the great sponsors that we work with.
And the Farron Hall statue project is part through the foundation, I believe.
Yeah, part of it is going to come through the foundation. That's from an outside group that has come forward and wanted to work with us, and that happens quite often. We have the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women statue at the Forks as well. That was an outside group. We are now in the process of putting up the Alloway Arch and Fountain. That came through the Winnipeg Foundation. So we are pretty much Winnipeg's backyard, and we look at ourselves as the meeting place at the Forks.
So when did the Forks start? When did we do that development? Remind me.
Well, it started quite a long time ago. Nearly 30 years ago would be when the plans were envisioned. The Forks itself is, you look at different stages. The Forks Market was the first building to open 25 years ago, but the port was done pretty much soon after that, and then Johnson Terminal followed. So, within a few years, within about 5 years, you would have had Johnson Terminal, the Forks Market, and the port, and it really was the port area, the access to the water, that seemed to turn Winnipeggers onto the idea of actually being able to see one of the most iconic, cornerstones of our city, the confluence of the Red and the Assiniboine rivers, and start to take us back to where we came from in reality, which is from those rivers.
First time I moved to Winnipeg was 1984, and I don't remember the Forks being there at that time.
It wouldn't have been.
Wouldn't
it
have
was
been.
Shortly after that, though.
Because I remember coming back several years later. I got transferred back with the company I was with at the time and went, wow, what a great idea. What a great development. And of course, it's only been added on to the skateboard and the stage and all those things that have happened over the years. It is a meeting place for Manitoba.
It is. We get 4 million visitors a year. So we are right up there. In fact, we get more visitors than Banff. And people I think are astounded by that, and often it's Winnipeggers who are the most astounded. We have this amazing jewel in the midst of our city, right in our downtown, really, and we sort of somewhat take it for granted. Although I know that everybody who brings visitors from anywhere, when you come to Winnipeg, I know you're coming to the Forks, which we are so proud of, so cognizant of, and we know we need to live up to those standards constantly.
And you're right. Without exception, if we have customers come in or family come in, the Forks is always on the list. I mean, Assiniboine Park and you can list off a whole, but the Forks is always on that list to take them to.
Yeah, and we're very pleased with that and very proud that that's what Winnipeggers think of when they think of our city.
Do you get tired of having to, the water, the walkway by the river there every year floods and you have to clean it up and then open it again and hope it doesn't flood? That's got to be a little frustrating over time.
It is. I wouldn't say it's frustrating. It's challenging because it's a living entity, and so you can never quite predict Mother Nature or a river. And so every year is challenging in its own way, whether the water is going to come up. We always expect it to come up in the early part of the year, and that's the way the port was designed. What's been different, and this year has actually been fantastic. The water went down and stayed down. What has been different in the last couple of years is the flow on the Assiniboine has become much faster, and those levels keep going up and down throughout the season, so they're so unpredictable. So when you've got a third-party operator like our water bus, our Splash Dash water bus, he can be up for 5 days, and then all of a sudden the water comes up again, and he's out of business, or he may be able to get back into business. But our waterways are fantastic also in that we can use them in the winter too, so there is always that component of it. Then they're much more predictable, sort of.
We're talking with Clare MacKay, Vice President of Corporate and Community Initiatives of the Fork North Portage. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. I'm Larry McIntosh. I want to take a moment to thank you for listening to Food and Friends. I'm thrilled with the number of people who say they listen to the show and who have sent in guest ideas. Should you have any comments or suggestions about the show, please feel free to email me anytime at larrymcintosh@peakmarket.com, and McIntosh is McIntosh. That's larrymcintosh@peakmarket.com. We'd love to hear from you. We're back with Clare MacKay, Vice President of Corporate and Community Initiatives at the Forks North Portage. So the Forks, we were talking last segment, it's a really cool place. It's where you take people that visit the city. It's where you go down for your Sunday coffee, whatever it is. And it's been around for a while. Is there a point that we are redeveloping it, or is that happening now?
Yeah, in actually 3 or 4 different ways it's happening right now. So the Forks itself is, between 25 and 28 years old, depending on when you use as your sort of starting point. Mm-hmm. The Forks Market, which is the first building that opened on the site, has just turned 25 last year. And we're to a point now where we need to do something in order to redevelop the space. So about 3 months ago, we introduced a new concept for us to sort of revitalize what we currently have. And it's not to say that we don't have some great favorites. There are people who have been with us, tenants who've been with us from the very beginning, and they are great, and they are destinations unto themselves. But we had some open spaces, and so we're actually undergoing a $2.5 million renovation to the center area of the Forks Market. And what we're doing there is we're introducing 5 new food tenants, and we went out to a citywide RFP, and we had actually almost 40 people come back and say that they wanted to be part of this new food hall concept that we've developed. And what we're looking for is local. We're always looking for local. As long as the current team that works at the Forks and the executive team is in place, you will never find a national chain on our site. We really work hard to work with local entrepreneurs and try and find ways to remove the barriers that may exist sometimes to get into business.
Right.
So with this food hall concept, we're actually looking at really finding ways to negate some of those barriers that people would find going into business for the first time, especially in the restaurant business. So we are actually outfitting all of the kitchens ourselves. And then charging, there will be rent and there will be things that need to be taken care of as well. But rather than have someone come in and not be able to afford the right equipment, we are actually going really high end, great, amazing kitchen equipment. And so they'll all be outfitted almost like you would think you buy a food truck and it comes with the basic equipment. You add whatever you need to add to make it special. So that's what we're doing, and that's the concept we've gone out with in our RFP. And we've been really pleased with the caliber of people who are coming forward. And they're different than your average food court offering. But what we're also doing is we're completely redoing all of the furnishings in our food hall center court area. And the final thing that we've done is we've added a craft beer and wine kiosk to the center area. So the idea is that you can go and get your Fergie's fish and chips, and then you can go and get a craft beer that goes along with it. And we'll be, again, focusing on local as the local market comes up, and we get more and more local craft brews. And we're working with a sommelier who's actually going to choose us 20 wines to start us off with. So you'll be able to do a flight of wines, you'll be able to do a flight of beers, and you'll be able to get that to go along with whatever you've decided to buy from the food hall. So it's an interesting concept, and we've been working really closely with Liquor and Gaming Authority and Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries to introduce this concept. And we're licensing that food court area.
So that is unique in itself. I wouldn't have thought that could have actually happened. So you can go to any of the vendors that are going to be there, including the new ones you're talking about, and have it right in the center court, like a liquor.
So you'd be able to go, you could go to, like I said, Fergie's Fish and Chips, get your 2-piece fish and chips, come back to center court, order yourself a craft beer, and sit down anywhere you'd like with your family and enjoy a beer to go along with your food. And it's happening in other centers, like in lots of other North American cities, things like this are happening. So we're a little slower to come to this idea, but it also brings to us an added element. We know that families love coming to us. We know lots of different people love coming to us. We've been missing a certain element of the population, especially in times like evenings when someone's going to a Jets game. You don't automatically think to come to the Forks before or after the theater. You don't automatically think to come to us before or after a hockey game, unless you're going to one of the full-service restaurants,
right,
of which we have 7 as well. But this gives us another demographic, and we need to always ensure that we're keeping ourselves financially self-sufficient. And the market in the last few years has been struggling, so this injects a new energy into it.
Go back to your earlier point. So you put a request for proposals out. You have 40 people interested.
Yep.
How many are coming in?
5.
5.
Yeah, we only have 5 spots right now. So we have an independent committee that's set up who's been helping us evaluate these, not only on their business model, but also in terms of what kinds of food are they offering. And I can confidently say that I think people are going to be incredibly pleased with the choices that we're looking at.
So the amazing thing to me is you're equipping the kitchen for them. So that's obviously a cost. And yes, you're going to recover that with rent or whatever you want to call it. And that's right, absolutely right. But I've never actually heard of that concept before. That's very interesting to get some people into the business that may not otherwise be able to.
Well, and I think we're very different than a traditional mall. We're very different than anything else really in Winnipeg. And the more that we read about markets especially across North America, they're challenging spaces. We're not alone in that. Mom and pops will struggle in different ways than national retailers will. So we have to allow for that, and we have to try and make sure that we can offer the best environment for people to succeed, because if they succeed, so do we.
You also had, over the summer, you had food trucks coming down there, didn't you? We
did, yeah. We opened up our site. We hadn't had food trucks before. We opened up our site to food trucks, and I'm not sure, we're going to need to go back to the drawing board on that. I'm not sure if we placed them in exactly the right spot, or if we did it in a way that made it so that it was good value for them. So we're gaining their feedback right now. I'd love for us to continue to have food trucks in a concentrated way in certain parts of the site. So we're going to continue to work with that community and see where that takes us.
We're speaking with Clare MacKay, Vice President of Corporate and Community Initiatives at the Forks North Portage. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. I'm Larry McIntosh. Peak of the Market is on Twitter. Please follow us at Peak of the Market for recipes and Food and Friends guest updates. We have over 200,000 Twitter followers, and we'd love to have you follow us too. Again, we're at Peak of the Market, or you can follow me at Larry McIntosh. As I mentioned earlier, Food and Friends is normally on Sundays at 1 o'clock, so I'm really happy you joined us. And normally in this segment we have a recipe, but because it's a holiday we don't. But I want to tell you that Peak of the Market's Recipe of the Day are featured in the Winnipeg Free Press and at peakmarket.com every day of the week. So go to the Winnipeg Free Press or our website for a new recipe 7 days a week. Please check them out. And I got to tell you that the Winnipeg Free Press has been great to work with. They pick a recipe that they think is seasonal out of our database. And if you go to the Free Press, they'll have a totally different recipe than our website. So you can get lots of veggie recipes out there. We'll be right back after this break for your news, sports, and weather. Welcome back. I'm Larry McIntosh. Food and Friends Radio is on TV. Each radio show is filmed and will be posted on Mytoba.ca later today. So if you want to see the TV version of this or previous radio shows, please visit Mytoba.ca. You can also listen to an audio podcast of Food and Friends at SoundCloud.com and at the iTunes Store. So please just do a search for Food and Friends with Larry at Mytoba.ca or SoundCloud.com or at the iTunes Store, and all the shows will come up for your listening or viewing pleasure. Now, it's very important for you to mention that Food and Friends is only available because of 680 CJOB and its advertisers. So please tune in right here Sunday afternoons at 1 or listen live at cjob.com. We're back with Clare MacKay, Vice President, Corporate and Community Initiatives at the Forks North Portage. So I've been lately hearing about Parcel 4 at the Forks. What exactly is Parcel 4?
And that's interesting because everyone seems to know about Parcel 4. We're actually working right now on Railside and Parcel 4. So Parcel 4 was in the news several years ago. There was a talk of a water park.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so everyone so immediately recognizes that that is the surface parking lot across from the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. It's about 6 acres, and it's owned by the City of Winnipeg. There is another parcel on the other side of York Avenue, equal in size, about 6 acres as well, also a surface parking lot that's called Railside. So we were engaged by the City of Winnipeg about 2 years ago to actually start planning both of those parcels of land. So we've got 12 acres in total, and we've been working for the last couple of years to engage the public, engage stakeholders, engage the 3 levels of government, and look at what we could do on those spaces. So through a lot of really great community engagement, really hands-on public consultation work, online work, we've heard from thousands of people. And if you were to sum it up in a couple of words, exactly what people are looking for at the Forks, it's more of the Forks.
Right, okay.
So they're really looking for what makes the Forks great, which is public spaces, plazas, community activities, restaurants, shops, plazas, and patios, as well as a 4-season place. So as part of our overall mission and vision for the Forks, we've always included all of those things, and from the very beginning have also always included residential. We've seen a big shift over the last 3 or 4 years in terms of the acceptance of residential at the Forks, and it has become part of our plans going forward. So we are looking at creating residential villages at the Forks that will make us into a neighborhood. And the reason we're looking at making us into a neighborhood is that 24-hour presence is also what turns on places like the Forks Market. So it gives us that critical mass that we can start to look at having more of a grocery presence. Right now we don't have the foot traffic and the type of people who are coming to buy those types of items. So it's difficult for anyone who wants to go into that business.
Right.
So this having that 24-hour presence will not only do that, but it also increases security on the site and adds that final element to the place. So there's surface parking lots right now, and Winnipeggers love their parking. So obviously we'll be looking at parking solutions. We're actually looking right now at VIA, and the VIA station could be a great entryway into the Forks site. But there's also the possibility that we might be able to put a parking structure beside the VIA station and have people flow through VIA station onto the Forks site, which frees up those 2 parcels to be more, to have public plazas, to have artwork, to have community facilities. The public engagement we just did last week actually included our top 10 ideas for what we'd like to see at the Forks, and there'll be ones that we're exploring in the coming months. One of the best ideas is a High Line, which is very similar to one that's in New York, and takes a second level presence. So you'd be able to meander through both of those sites on a second level and have it be done through beautiful spaces and artwork and plantings and a public promenade almost, but on a second level. So you'd be able to sort of almost see over the rail line. So that physical barrier kind of disappears because we have that takes us from downtown to us. We're looking at bus rapid transit maybe coming up onto some of those abandoned rail lines. So again, making us that hub. Looking at things like a community center or a community facility. Taking the rail line, what is now basically the back of the rail line, turning that into a production promenade where artisans could actually make their wares as well as sell their wares. So we have a ton of great ideas that we're looking at for the future, really to complete the Forks. That final 12 acres would really complete us. We're 54 acres in total, so it's a large amount of land.
That consultation has to be interesting, though, because, no matter where you live in the city or the province, you feel like the Forks is part of you, right? I mean, part of our province, part of whatever you want to say, like your ownership of you almost. So, whether that's parking or whether that's residential or whether that's whatever it is, everybody has to have an opinion on that.
And they do, and we've been doing this for a few years. We're finding that the conversation has shifted quite a bit. I would say if you'd had the consultations 20 years ago, there would have been a very different outcome. I would say in the last 5 years, the idea of us becoming an urban park, an urban center is shifting and changing. And the demand for it to be just green space is a minority opinion based on what we've heard so far, versus we want it to be engaging. We want it to be public. We want places to meet people, to sit with people, to engage in either community activities or just in conversation with one another. So it has been a very interesting process, and we do take the consultations very much to heart and very seriously. So it's why we keep coming back out. We want to make sure that we gauge what we do against what we've heard. And so far, we're very heartened by the fact that I would say we have, I wouldn't say 100%.
No,
the
never
public,
will.
No,
never will.
And we
Nope.
never will. But
Nope.
we are very much trying to balance that middle portion where we will make the most people happy.
And when Shelley and I go down to the Forks, we think, okay, parking, and we never had problems finding parking. We think, well, what happens to all those lots if you do something else with them? But on the other hand, it also seems a shame to just have a flat gravel parking lots there in some cases, to have that property right downtown Winnipeg not be used for more.
Yeah, one of the things we're looking at right now, and we're going to test something like this in the next couple of weeks, is there are 2 lanes each way down Israel Astor Way. In one portion, we're going to narrow it.
We're speaking with Clare MacKay from the Forks North Portage. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. I'm Larry McIntosh. With students going back to school tomorrow, you know what that means. Fundraising begins very soon. For all of you involved in school or daycare fundraising in some way, I just wanted to tell you about the Farm to School Manitoba Healthy Choice Fundraiser. This fundraiser is open to all Manitoba schools, public or private, K-12, and all licensed daycares anywhere in the province of Manitoba. Basically, the fundraiser works like this. The students sell bundles of Manitoba-grown peak-of-the-market vegetables to raise money for their school or daycare. It can be raise money for a school band trip, sports tournament, new equipment, whatever it is. Bundle A has carrots, cooking onions, and red potatoes and sells for $10. Bundle B has larger packs of carrots, red potatoes, and cooking onions, as well as green cabbage and parsnips, and it sells for $20. The great thing about this fundraiser is that the school or daycare keeps half the selling price, a 50% profit, which is great for any fundraiser. Last year, this fundraiser raised over $400,000 for Manitoba schools and daycares, and that's what the schools and daycares kept, $400,000 for 1 year alone. The fundraiser begins in September and runs until December 9th. Again, it's open to any school or daycare anywhere in Manitoba. If you're interested in getting information on the Farm to School fundraiser or to register as a school or daycare, please visit their website at farmtoschool.ca. That's farmtoschool.ca. We're back with Clare MacKay, Vice President in Corporate and Community Initiatives at the Forks North Portage. So, the summer at the Forks is always amazing. There's so much going on in the summertime. It's great to go down there, walk by the river, have some food, etc. But winter's coming, right? It's not here yet. I get that. We're still harvesting, so it's not here yet.
Yeah.
But what do you do over the wintertime to get people down there and have activities?
Well, it's hard to believe when it's as warm out as it has been over the last few weeks, but we are well into winter planning. We are a 365-day-a-year site. We never really close, so we want to be that to our city. We've been very fortunate that over the last few years, our winters, especially on the weekends and especially when it's above minus 25, are as well attended as our summer weekends are. So we will get 40,000 people through on a July weekend from Friday night to Sunday night. We are getting those numbers as well in January and February. As soon as the river trail opens, we really start to see those numbers pick up. So it's fantastic. Winnipeggers have really embraced the thing that they used to complain about the most, our winters. And so we're well into winter planning right now. We are right now looking at our warming huts competition. It actually closed, I believe it closed a couple of days ago. And so our jury is being assembled and they're looking at submissions, hundreds of submissions from all over the world, and they'll just get to choose 3. Which is always interesting and an amazing process because they literally come from almost every continent. Some of them are crazy. Some of them are very cliched, from people who don't live in Canada. There's always something that relates to a beaver, always something that relates to a hockey stick. But I think we usually come out with a really great crop of those every year, and people really have really adopted them as well, so that's fantastic. We're working with the people from Raw Almond again, looking at the restaurant on the river. What are they going to do that's different this year as well? What's their structure going to look like? How are they going to program it? Where are the chefs coming from? All of that kind of great stuff. And then there are always the great things that just sort of happen that we don't even know about yet. And so I know that there's a Portraits on the Ice project that's talked to us about coming and placing portraits of women as we celebrate the right to vote, which started in Manitoba. So there's that great project, and they specifically want to do it in the winter. We always have some pop-up strange things like libraries or art installations. And right now we're working with, we've invited several star architects, and right now we have a really exciting one who we may be able to announce as early as November, a world-class artist who may join us this year.
Oh, well.
So it really gains momentum, and it's because Winnipeggers have really embraced it, and they love everything about the Red River Mutual Trail, as well as everything that happens in Arctic Glacier Winter Park as well. So it's a fantastic part of who we are.
So is the Forks responsible for that whole winter trail? Like
We are
doing the Zamboni thing and all.
Yep.
I see it going up and down the ice there.
Yep.
Yeah?
I have not yet learned to drive the Zamboni, but I am convinced that I will at some point. And it is powered by our Target Zero program, so it really is powered by used fryer oil.
Oh.
So it kind of smells like French fries if you're behind it. But yeah, so, we are, again, dealing with Mother Nature and how far can we go and how long can it be every year and which parts are open and which parts aren't. We always try and beat Ottawa in terms of opening the trail.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they always have the advantage that theirs is controlled by a lock system, so they know exactly when they can go on and exactly when they can come off. So it's a fantastic part of what we do. And yeah, it is. We maintain the trail. We hand shovel it at the very outset, and it's our guys who are out there at 2 o'clock in the morning making sure that you can skate it on a Saturday morning. They're flooding it.
And sometimes the season's longer than other times, but I know Shelley and I live on the river, and we see it's well used. I mean, there's lots of people, water taxis in the summertime come to our place, and then the people are skating to the end of the trail there. It's very well used.
Yeah, it is. And as I said, those numbers are really bearing it out. The gentleman who owns the skate rental shop is unbelievably busy, and it just goes up and up every year.
And just between you and me, I never learned how to skate.
Oh.
So Shelley and I, and Shelley knows how to skate, but Shelley and I actually go down there and walk
Yep.
that trail, and it's not as windy down there. It's actually quite lovely.
No, the Assiniboine is very sort of enclosed and very, very protected. The red is a little bit different. It's a bit more windswept, but there are people on bikes down there. I've seen little kids on bikes now down there in the winter, people walking dogs, runners, everybody. So it really is, it is open to everybody. We've looked at cross-country skis down there. We can never keep them groomed well enough.
Right.
So, but it does definitely bring pretty much everybody from the city. So I always say don't just bring people in the summer, bring them in the winter too.
We're speaking with Clare MacKay. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Food and Friends. Please join me next Saturday at 1 o'clock when my guest will be Manitoba's own Jonathan Toews. He's the captain of the Chicago Blackhawks and the youngest player ever to win the triple gold, and that's gold in Olympics, gold in World Champion, and obviously the Stanley Cup. So my guest next week, Jonathan Toews. My guest today has been Clare MacKay, Vice President, Corporate and Community Initiatives at the Forks North Portage. This has been a lot of fun learning about everything, and there's lots happening at the Forks.
Always lots happening. Thanks so much for having me.
And if there's, I'm sure you have a website that talks about this?
We do, theforks.ca, and we also have Instagram and Facebook and all those other things.
Thank you so much for being on Food and Friends.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Take care, everybody, and please don't forget to eat your veggies.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was awesome.